Hey there, welcome to the Compared to Who show. I'm Heather Creekmore, and I am happy that you are watching or listening today. If you're watching, you may notice I am in aerobic instructor, not garb, because you can really only see me from the neck up. And it's good because if you could see anything lower than that, it would not be pretty. But I am talking today to my friend Amy Connell. And the topic for today's message is confessions of an over 40 fitness instructor. And so today we are going to have a fun talk about what it's like in the fitness industry, what it's like to have body image struggles and work in the fitness industry, what's expected of those in the fitness industry, what you, as someone who has taken a class, are probably thinking about your instructor when you're in there. Yeah, we know you. We've got you figured out. So we're going to talk about all those things. And listen, I just want to start off by let me just put this out there. If you think that this conversation by two people who were fitness instructors will not be helpful, because how can a fitness instructor understand what body image issues are like? I am just here to tell you that you're wrong. Okay. I mean that in the nicest, most loving way. But fitness instructors struggle in this area too, just like models struggle. And I get it. Like when I hear that a model struggles with body image, I want to roll my eyes, but it's true. And sometimes those of us that are in those industries where we're supposed to look a certain way, or used to be in that industry, I'm no longer in the industry, but Amy still is. But sometimes those of us who are in this industry struggle in even deeper ways because of the expectations put on us. So today, my guest is my new friend, Amy Connell. Let me tell you just a little bit about Amy. She is an NASM. And for those of you not in the industry, I think that stands for the National Association of Sports Medicine, correct? Yes. Certified personal trainer. She's a nutrition coach. And get this, she's an imperfect eater. Who admits to that? Amy does. She's host of the Graced Health podcast, and she seeks to equip women with simple and grace-filled ways to take care of and appreciate their God-created body. She enjoys a little chocolate in the process is her tagline that she always makes sure to mention. So if you work with Amy, you're not working with someone who is like, no chocolate allowed. She lives in the Houston, Texas area, and she's married and has been married for 23 years. And she has two always hungry teenage boys and a stray turned princess pit bull named Grace. Amy, welcome to the Compared to Who show.
Thank you, Heather. I'm so happy to be here. I'm really excited for this conversation.
So we met a couple of weeks ago. I don't know, it might have been a month ago. COVID has erased my ability to track time.
True.
but we met when I was on your show. Mm-hmm. And so I'd encourage anyone watching or listening to check out that episode of the Graced Health podcast. But we met and we started talking afterwards. And I was like, you know what would be super fun? Have a conversation about what it's like to be an over 40 fitness instructor. And you were like, yeah, I'm game. So I want to go there. But first, just let us get to know you a little bit. Can you tell me a little bit about your story, maybe your struggle with body image, and maybe like what led you to become a fitness instructor?
I would love to. I grew up dancing, so I have always had a love of movement and an awareness of my movement. Late high school, I started with, I think my first foray into group fitness, which back then it was called aerobics, but it was a step aerobics class. And been doing it so long, or at least that was when I started, it was, showing up in a thong leotard and one of those, 3-inch wide stretchy belts.
Oh, that's awesome.
That only the 40 people can remember. Thank goodness we don't do that anymore. And really through college, that was how I moved. That was, I would go to group fitness classes. Into my professional career, I worked downtown, and there was a downtown YMCA where I loved to go and take different classes. And just kind of felt at home. I loved the concept of everybody moving together to the beat. I mean, group fitness has kind of changed and evolved since then, but it used to be that we were all doing the same thing all the time, which I have mixed feelings about, but it was fun for me. then when I had my first son, we decided that I would stay home with him, and I needed a lifeline.
Mhm.
Going from professional career and Excel spreadsheets and conference calls and boondoggles to staying at home with a baby
Mhm.
was, as any mom can appreciate, a little bit of a change. So I had a friend who had a studio that was really focused on exercise. It was pre and postnatal fitness. So I used to go and do yoga when I was pregnant. And then after I was pregnant, I would go in the middle of the day and work. And we got to bring our babies and work out with our babies. So there was no, gym, childcare area that we had to worry about and germs. He was with me, and it was just, it was truly, it gave me life. Um, in that sense, obviously, life doesn't really come from a fitness class, but it was, so critical to me and my sanity and understanding that I'm not the only one who's up all night and having problems nursing. And it was just really great. So shortly after I had him, we moved, and then I got pregnant very quickly. My babies or my boys are 20 months apart. So when I had my second one, I actually went to our community center. I live in one of these big Texas master plan communities, and went to the community center and said, look, I think that this neighborhood would be ripe for something like this. And they approved it. I got my first certification, and that was in the pre and postnatal, did classes, and then it just kind of went from there. Then when that program, it was just time to close that down. I ended up going to a local gym and went from there. So I've been teaching group fitness, and certified since my youngest, who is 15, so 15 years. And then got my personal trainer certification several years ago when I just really felt like it was time to take that next step
Mhm.
and increase my knowledge a little bit more.
Awesome. Okay.
Um, so that's the technical stuff. Now,
So
the
when
body
did you,
image stuff.
yeah, hold on just a second, Amy. So when, and not to make you disclose your age, but 15 years ago, how old were you when you started teaching then? Were you in your 20s?
Well, I'm 46. I'll tell anyone that.
Me too.
I'll tell.
So
I
you were
was so
31.
I was 30. Well, I
Yeah.
was
Okay.
30.
30. Okay.
Yeah, because he'll turn 16 this year.
Okay.
Yeah, so I started when I was 30, and really. Along that same path, I was really dealing with my own body image issues. And I
Mhm.
think this is where one area that you and I have, a lot of similarities. I really can't remember a time in my teens, 20s, 30s where I wasn't happy with my body,
Mhm.
and really turned to over exercising, um, really overthinking the food, and really looking back, I think it was more, not so much that it was perfection in my eating, but it
Mhm.
was shaming myself for what I
Mm.
ate and feeling
Mm.
badly about it. And just snowballing, right? It was like a
Mhm.
slow burn. It wasn't one day I decided to get up and do 4 workouts in 24 hours, which, I did
Yeah.
from time to time.
Mhm.
Don't recommend that, by the way.
Mhm.
Don't recommend that.
Been
Uh,
there.
yeah, yeah. And really, the very short of the story is, um, I felt called to write and to talk about balance because it was a journey that I was on. And at one point in that process, God came to me and really quite softly, but He said, "Amy, you're spending more time thinking about the food you're going to eat
Mm.
and the exercise you're going to do than you are about me."
Mm.
And kind of in the process of all of that, God really, I mean, I just say it's His grace and His mercy that pulled me out, with a lot of help from my husband, who's a really fantastic man. And kind of pulled that out. And since then, He has really impressed upon me through script, through His word, through lessons at my church, that we take care of our body, and yes, we exercise, and yes, we eat well, but it's not so we look a certain way. It's so we
Mm.
can do what we're called to do.
Right.
And that is really the secret sauce. And that
Yeah.
is where I love to sit and stand and be in my space, because it's so much bigger than just what I do and what I look like.
Yep. Amen. Okay. But let's go out of that space a bit.
Yes. Yes. I don't know if, sorry, I get in on tangents sometimes.
No,
I hope that answered your question.
Perfect. No. But I want to backtrack. Okay. Because I think, at least for me, and I don't, we have different stories that are similar, but I think for me, becoming a fitness instructor was a card I was going to play, if you will, to find freedom from body image issues. I thought if I could just be one of them, then I probably wouldn't struggle anymore, because I would have like this, I guess it would almost be akin to, we mentioned modeling earlier, but it's like almost akin to like if someone called you a model, okay, well then how could you not think you were pretty if you were pretty enough to be picked to, to be in someone's picture? It was the same kind of thing for me. Like if I could get someone to stamp fitness instructor on my resume or on my shirt, as the case may be, then I would know that I was worthy, good enough, by someone's standard, physically okay. And yet it didn't solve it for me. And so I know that your journey kind of continued, like, at least from what I understand, that you were on a journey, and being a fitness instructor didn't collide with the moment when God showed you that you were really wrestling an idol. So can you talk to me a little bit about whether or not that was part of it for you? Was there any part of you that felt like achieving that status would change anything?
That's interesting. I have to say, Heather, if that was part of my motivation, I don't know that I recognized it.
Okay.
But what I'm hearing you say is something that I think a lot of us can relate to is, if I fill in the blank, then I'll feel happy about myself.
Right.
If I have a perfect eating day, then I'll feel good. If I reach to a certain number on the scale,
Right.
then I'll feel better. And, I mean, my path into group fitness definitely with the babies was like, that was just so important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I really liked the childcare area at the gym.
Uh-huh.
That was really important to me
Yeah.
too. If truth be told, my kids don't listen to podcasts, so I can say that. But yeah, I mean, I think for sure, it's very easy. And if I'm honest, I think I still probably fall under this, where my identity gets wrapped up in being a fitness professional. And particularly in this space where I love educating women,
Mm-hmm.
not because there's so much to do, but because let's pull it back and make it more simple.
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny. I was one of the things I love to do. I'm a little crazy this way, but I love to go to some football fields we have and do sprints.
Okay.
It's crazy. My husband's like, "You're a psychopath." I'm like, "I know," but it's just something I do. And I found myself twice within the span of like 40 minutes, just in conversation, making, with people I've never met. And I'm like, "Oh yeah, well, I'm a personal trainer." Like, and then in hindsight, I was like, "Girl, you are really playing that card. Like you are saying that to justify your either knowledge or abilities, or, well, I may not look like you think I'm going to look, so I'm going to tell you that I'm a personal trainer."
Right.
And that hurt a little bit.
Yeah.
When God was like, "You're leaning a little bit too much on this," rather than, something else or some other kind of connection point. So, yeah, I mean, I think, I have definitely had those if then statements. But I will also share that, that's a lot of pressure too, that whether or not we put that on ourselves, or sometimes other people do without even realizing it. I was out like at a local restaurant one time, and went over to say hi to a friend who was eating, and she had someone there who I'd never met. And she said, "Oh, this is Amy. Oh yeah, Amy teaches classes, over at the fields," and da, 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 da. And I could see it was like not even an eighth of a second, but you could see her eyes go from my eyes all the way down to my toes. You look like maybe you know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah.
and all the way back. And if I could slow it down, it was like this visual assessment of,
Mhm.
is she worthy of the body that she
Yeah.
says that she does for a living?
Yeah.
So that's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so there's a lot of things you said that I want to touch on, but as I'm kind of thinking through it in my mind, it all goes into identity, right?
Mhm.
Like it just all
Mhm.
wraps up in that bundle because
Yeah.
just as I mean, I've done the same thing. In fact, I think I might have shared on your show that I had a friend, it was after I written my first book. I had a friend that was like, why do you have that you teach fitness classes in your bio? I was like, because I do. I've been a fitness instructor for 10 years and I teach, 3 classes a week. And she's like, it is 3 hours out of your life. Like, why is that important enough for you to put in your bio? And I was like, ooh, huh. well, and I mean, stuttering, like, yeah, I don't know, and so that was a real moment of conviction for me. But even for those who aren't fitness instructors, I think a lot of moms, especially if you decided to maybe, take some time off from working or quit work altogether to just focus on home. Like, I don't know. I used to do the like, oh, I'm just a mom now. But let me tell you what I used to do
Yeah.
before I became a mom. And you're right. It's this like, hey, I want you to think of me in this way. I want you to identify me as this. This is my real identity. And so it's important to recognize that. And then the whole size up thing. Whoo. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think if you're honest and you're watching or listening today, there's a good chance that you have walked, if you've ever gone to a fitness class at a gym. And I can say this because I've been on both sides, right? I was
Mhm.
the person up front and I was the person coming in. But as the person up front, I observed it a whole lot more than the person coming in. But you go into a class and the first thing you do is you size up that instructor. I mean, I have sized up instructors to figure out how hard the class was going to be, right?
Oh,
Like
yeah,
if I'm
and you're
going
always
into,
wrong.
yeah, exactly. And then, so I'll confess, this is really horrible, but like, so I taught until about 3 years ago. So I was 43 when I quit teaching. And in that time, right around the time I turned 40, God had told me that I needed to quit the gym. And he and I had this negotiation back and forth because I was like, I can't quit the gym. Like, if I quit the gym, what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my body? And really, it was what's going to happen to my identity. And so it was a crisis. And so in my negotiations with God, which I don't recommend necessarily, because I was like, okay,
That's something else you'll always lose. Yes.
exactly. Like I'm like, I'll just go on a sabbatical, God. Like, I'll ask the gym for a sabbatical. I'm not going to quit because I just can't quit. And so I
Yeah.
went on a sabbatical and went for several months without teaching, and then ended up going back to it. And so that's a story I share on the blog. But in that, um, I totally lost my train of thought there for a second. But what we were talking about was identity and the gym, and being an over 40 instructor and being the person in the front of the room. And so as a 41, 42, 43-year old, when that 20 something came in and sized me up and down, it made me determined to make that a much harder class. And I
Yeah.
should have made it. And so that reveals some wickedness that remains in my heart, I'm afraid, of still trying to prove my worth, or you use the word, Amy, and I love this, justify, right? Because
Yeah.
isn't that really what it's about? Like, it's, where is our justification? And as Christians, we're justified by what Jesus did for us on the cross. But how often do we try to use what we look like, what we can do, how much we weigh, maybe even like the fact that you said the if I could run a marathon, then I would feel validated. I know women that have had that mantra, or if I could just do a try, or if I could just do the Ironman, then, and it's just like, there's always one more, right? Because you do the marathon and then you got to do the triathlon, and then then you got to go for the big contest. It's never
It's
enough.
never enough.
And learning that we can't justify ourselves in that way is such an important part of the process. So, well, let's talk about the industry for a second. Like, what have you seen kind of behind the scenes? You had to get certifications. You had to go, take tests to to get these certifications, because most certifications, now there are certifications that don't make you do anything, but most good certifications make you show up and exercise a little bit, make sure you're qualified.
Yeah.
What have you noticed? Anything in particular?
Well, it's funny. I want to combine that answer with something you just mentioned,
Yeah.
and that was when the 20 somethings show up.
Mm.
So, as you know, with certifications, and I'm under NASM, which you were right, National Academy of Sports Medicine. You have to have continuing education credits. Which, side note, if you're ever working with a fitness professional, make sure they're needing to have those continuing education because they're really important. But oftentimes, the easiest way to get those credits, this was pre-COVID, was you show up at a conference for a weekend and you just bang out a bunch of classes and you bang out things. So I would show up, as a 40 something year old, and there's all these 20-year-olds. Oftentimes at those conferences, they're either like fitness classes. So you're learning new techniques to take back to your class or to your community, or their lectures. So I would step into these classes, and the girls were going crazy. And then I'm like, these girls are half my age, but I feel like I need to keep up because I don't want to look like, oh, well, she's a fitness instructor and she can't keep up, even though there's been like 5 of them a day. I mean, they're the most physically exhausting thing I've ever done. So, yeah, that is real, and that is definitely hard. So I think it happens not only with the class leader, trainer, instructor, client or relationship, but it also happens on a peer-to-peer relationship. But in terms of the industry, it's interesting. I have been very intentional about where who I learn from.
Mm.
And what I'm watching. And, on our Instagram feeds, we can curate that however we want. So the only people I'm looking at right now are those who are somewhat like-minded.
Right. Yeah.
Because being an over 40, yeah, it is. It's different. And quite honestly, as women, particularly grow, as we age, we need to work out differently than we did when we were 25. And a lot of the studies that are out there and this is a whole nother conversation I would love to get into if you want to, but like that the morning shows and the BuzzFeed articles and all of those, most of those studies are done on men in their 20s. I'm not a man and I'm not in my 20s anymore. So a lot of it is just kind of learning and being confident in moving in a way that God wants me to move now, and not comparing that, speaking of comparison, not comparing that to how I moved even just 10 years ago, but certainly not 20 years ago.
Right.
But because it's different. And I think it's important to learn that. So, because once you learn a little bit more, then you're more grace giving to yourself. You're more confident in yourself. It's just like, as we grow in our relationship with Jesus, we are less likely to start, to compare ourselves to others. We stay in our lane. And so I know that that's kind of weird comparing the fitness industry to Jesus, but it's a process, and it really, gosh, it's freeing once you figure it out too. I will say that.
Yeah. Well, you said the word grace, and that's part of the title of your podcast. And I think that's the key,
Yeah.
right? If we don't give ourselves grace to age, like, whew, like all the things that creates, right? You're frustrated. You can never find the perfect wrinkle cream, right? Like you can't stop the clock, or like menopause and the hormones happen, and there is not much you can do about it. You can, take your supplements, but they only go so far. And so like, if we don't give ourselves grace to get older and for our bodies to change, and like we don't treat them differently in the way they need to be treated differently, and that ultimately harms us. And I agree so much with what you're saying about we need to exercise differently over 40. And I mean, I know personally, and I think I've shared this on a podcast before, but like I taught spin. I taught kickboxing and spin. Now, you were step girl. I am too much of a klutz to do step aerobics. Like, seriously, even in my prime, you put a step in front of me and I will trip over it. Like I showed up at a class I was subbing once, and they were like, "This is step." And I'm like, "They didn't tell me it was step."
Oh, no.
Like, I don't do
of
step.
all the formats to get thrown into.
Go get your step and we'll just work with it. And it was the lamest step class any of those people ever had. Cause it was like, step up.
Step down.
Okay, step down.
I've done one
Step
of
to
those.
the side. Okay. Step back on it. Okay, now let's push the step up and just do some free weights.
Yeah.
It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible.
Yeah.
But oh yeah, so you did step. I'm having a hard time keeping my train of thought today, Amy. Oh my goodness.
But you were saying you did spin.
Yes, I did.
You taught spin 3 times a week.
Thank you for saving me. And so I would work out at like super high heart rate for the duration of the time. And especially if I was in front of a class, that made me go even harder because I felt like I had to prove myself to the class. And for some reason, and I think this is the adrenaline works. But when I was in front of a class, I had enough adrenaline to go fast and hard for 45 minutes without it really showing at the time. Like I wasn't winded. I wasn't huffing and puffing into the mic. Like I was fine because I had the surge. And then I would get home and I would have to take 3 naps. Like literally, I would take a nap as soon as I got home because I often taught like a 6 a.m. class.
Yeah.
I'd have to take a nap at 7 until like 8 to start my day.
Yep. Been there.
By 11, I was crashed again. And then that afternoon, I'm literally 3 naps a day. And so that was part of God speaking to me. I'm like, okay, what you're doing in your body this is not normal. It's not good to get a 45-minute workout in and then have to sleep for 3 extra hours during the day. You're doing something wrong. And so I share that just as an encouragement to anyone watching or listening. Like, it's okay to work out differently as you age. And, and I think that's a way we were created. And then also there's this whole thing. I don't know if you have an opinion on this or not, Amy, but like aerobics was just invented in the 1980s, right? Late 70s, but Ken Cooper really got it going in the 80s. Like, and before that point, like people didn't go to gyms and work out together. That was not a thing. And so it's only been 40 years. So it's like our generation is the first generation to really know what it's like to be doing. I mean, I think I went to the YMCA at age 12 or 13 and did like the group fitness classes in the summer. Like, I've been doing aerobics for over 30 years, but we don't really know what impact that has on people yet, right? Except for us, right? Like we're the first people to experience 30 years of aerobics. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting that you say that. I had a guest on recently named Pete McCall, and he is an educator to fitness professionals and like high fitness enthusiasts. And he was talking about, yes, exactly the same generation. Now, if you'll take a step back, our parents were the ones who started going to these classes in their 40s. So, or, maybe a little bit before then, but I think one thing to remember is we were meant to move and we were designed to move. And if you go back to, any of the gospels, we see Jesus walking all the time, not sitting at a desk or scrolling on his phone. Right. So a lot of these things were intended to replace the sedentary lifestyle that we have. I think what we're learning is something that seems so basic, but the importance of moving in a lot of different ways and not just, you mentioned spin, and I taught spin too. So I'm rolling because I totally know what you're talking about with that, but not just going to spin 3 times a week or not just running all the time. Like our bodies were designed to move in a lot of different ways. And I think what has happened is, I don't want to say like the fitness industry as a whole, but we get these little snippets of studies that are done and that are beneficial and they're helpful, but then we take them. And there's this word that I actually heard on that All About Fitness podcast, and I love it. I thought it was a made up word, but it's actually not. It's called, and I never say it right, fetish size.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's creating something and making a fetish out of it, or, or like I don't know if obsession is the right word, but we tend to do it over and over and over and over again. Well, our bodies weren't not designed to be on a bike. That's the only way that we move.
Right.
So I think that we are learning that. And one of my biggest passions and levels of excitement, I guess, in the fitness industry recently is mobility.
Mm.
So that is more, and I'll just do a quick snippet for that, but that's more, it's slower movements. It's moving your body in a lot of different ways. It's increasing your range of motion. So, if you can see, yep. See there, I sweat.
We should talk about that.
I knew that was a risk. I shouldn't have done that. YouTube gets a really extra fun thing.
Yeah. If you're just listening, you're going to want to go to YouTube because you missed it.
Yes, I'm moving my arm all in a circle, and Heather has talked about in her books how much she sweats, and I am right there with her. But it's increasing that range of motion. It's stabilizing the joints, but it requires us to move in a lot of weird and funky movements. And so anyway, learning about that and incorporating that into the things that we also love to do. Sorry, that was a sidetrack, but I hope that answered. Does that answer your question? See, I'm kind of going off on my own little tangent here.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
And my brain, there is some older fitness person had like their mobility workout advertised, and like, how PBS would do like those 3-hour, like commercials for different things. And so I'm picturing in my mind, but I watched the whole thing, of course, and they were making a convincing case for just exactly what you're saying, like doing different motions because, and they were working mostly with seniors. I think it was a program for senior citizens, and I was watching it as research, I'm sure. But they were making a case for, for what happens when you are a certain age and you only do certain movements, how you actually lose the ability to do other movements. And then eventually you lose the ability to do the movements you were doing because you've lost that other ability. And it just shrinks your range of motion and your general mobility down so severely that, that's why they say that when you retire, you should always have stairs in your house. Like, you should not retire to a 1-story home like most people believe they should. You should actually retire and still have stairs. You have to keep going up the steps, but most people don't stop. Anyway, we've come quite a far ways.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry.
No, I love it. It's good. It's all good stuff. Okay. So I don't know. I mean, I build this as confessions of an over 40 fitness instructor, and I'm trying to think if there's anything else we need to confess here, Amy.
Well, yeah. May I offer something?
Yes, absolutely. Please.
I actually just submitted a post on this to someone, but this is the deal. When someone walks into a class or even a one-on-one training session, you can look at your trainer, you can look at your instructor and assume some things. Things you might assume are, one, she's this happy all the time. Mm. Another thing, she always looks put together. You might assume and now I've totally lost my train of thought. So let's just go back to those two. Mm-hmm. When someone comes into a session with me, whether or not it's a class or it's a one-on-one, they are paying for a positive experience.
Absolutely.
And so I have had people who are like, you're just so happy and you're just so motivating and you're so encouraging. I'm like, yeah, you're paying me to be that way. Yeah. That does not mean that's how I am 24 hours a day.
Right.
Do I wish I was? Yes. But that is not, you're paying for an experience, and I'm here to motivate you, and I'm here to recognize the great things that you're doing, but I'm not that's not the 24-hour a day personality that I have. Right. If you show up and I'm wearing all black, I probably had too many chips and guacamole. Let's just be honest.
That happens in Texas.
Yes,
all the time.
A little bit in Texas. But, I'm not always confident in my body. Yeah. I'm not, I've been told I've been told I'm real sized. So I'm like, I don't even know what that means. We're all real. But, I am not a skinny mini personal trainer. I'm, and I, for whatever it's worth, if I stand up really, really tall, I'm 5'4". I used to be 5'4" without standing really tall. Now I'm like, and I'm around 148 pounds. I've got a lot of muscle on me. It's not all muscle. Let's just be honest. So, it's not, when, sorry, I'm kind of stumbling over my words here, but, I'm not always confident. I'm not always as confident as I might appear. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, that's another thing that is confessions of a fitness professional.
Well,
And I lost the one. Sorry, go on, because I
well,
lost
no.
the one that I
Well,
was
let
I
me
had
ask you a
said.
question, and maybe it'll bring it back. But I think that's the good point there. Well, there's a lot of good points there, but one main point to pick out there is idolizing that fitness instructor,
Oh,
idolizing that fitness professional, that your personal
yeah,
trainer, whatever. Like, just cut that out, friends. Right?
yeah,
Because they
yeah.
don't want to be your idol, first of all.
No,
Like, I
no.
don't think most healthy fitness professionals don't long for that. I'm sure that there are some that just would love that, but most healthy ones do not want that. But beyond that, it's just this is what I always say about the magazine covers at Target. So some of you all have heard this before, so just bear with me because I feel like it's worth saying again. But we check out a Target and you look at those magazine covers and you see those bodies and you think, oh, if I could look like that, wow. Oh
Mhm.
boy, if I could look that good in a bikini, like what my life, wow,
Oh,
what
it
a
would
difference
be
it would
so
make.
just then nothing would be wrong anymore if we
Exactly.
looked like that. Yeah.
Exactly. But then what you don't do is you don't read the headlines around that body, right? Because when you read the headlines on those magazine covers around that body, it's often like how she coped with his cheating, or how she almost ended it all, or her struggle with addiction, or what happened when Hollywood, excluded her from whatever. Like, these women with these awesome bodies still have struggle and heartache in relationships. They still have struggle and heartache at work.
Yeah.
They still have real struggle. And so, just like idolizing them or idealizing slash idolizing them isn't a true story, it's the same with these people in your life that are super fit. And, it's not giving you the whole story. And whenever we look at someone and just make assumptions on them based on how they look, we're objectifying them,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right. And there's nothing that drives a bigger wedge, I believe, between women than objectifying each other, right? Like, we
Yeah.
get mad at men for doing it. Don't objectify women. Like, we're clear on, no, don't objectify women. Oh, how awful of you to object. But yet we are like, oh, did you see her? Oh, she looks so good. Ugh. No, we got to cut that
She
stuff
must be on
out.
diet pills,
Right.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, oh, she gets surgery. Like,
Yeah.
we gotta cut that out. We gotta stop objectifying each other.
Yeah.
Did you
And
think of your other thing?
making assumptions on people. Yeah, just based on off of how they look. And
Right.
two, I think that industry is guilty of that, and they get that be a very fit person and not necessarily fit into that, and I'm using quotes, I want to be very clear, I'm using quotes here, that ideal size. I mean,
Mhm.
health is not a size, and there are so many other metrics of health. And so
Right.
as fitness professionals, so here's another confession for you. Oftentimes, one thing people are guilty of is looking at a client or looking at someone who comes into class and assuming their fitness level
Mm,
based off of their size,
mm.
which is so wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
So wrong. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that was, I honestly, I'm like, do I even want to admit this? But I have done that in the past myself. And I'm so repentant of it.
Mhm.
I hate that I have, and I've
Mm.
grown since then and learned so much. But, that's, I think too, is assumptions, but we all can make an assumptions, right? Out of
Right.
so many different things and so
Right.
many looks. And it's not, um, you know, what's that, the scripture from Samuel, God looks at the heart, that,
Mhm.
God, man looks at the outward
Outward
appearance, but
appearance.
God looks
Mhm.
at the heart. And, we've just got to take a little bit of time to get to know our
Right.
either peers who are in our classes, or if we are the professionals, to get to know our clients and really kind of understand where they're coming from too, rather than just automatically making an assumption and thinking that we know what's best for them.
Right. And what's coming to my mind immediately is thinking about your story and how what really drew you in, it sounds like, was the community. Like, you
Yeah.
needed community when you had babies. You needed a different kind of community, a community of women that were at the same place in life as you were. And I feel like fitness actually does that for a lot of people. I think that's why the CrossFit model has taken off, because
Mhm.
people find church, they find community at their CrossFit gym. They've got their people. And I really feel like if you're listening today and you are part of a community, maybe at like a CrossFit gym or a community at your gym, you have such an awesome opportunity to reach people that are really struggling with body image issues. I mean, you really do, right?
Yeah.
Because I wrote a blog post on this for some publication years ago, but just what an, like we always talk about, or I don't know, in circles I'm in, there's kind of this like, it's hard to witness to people. Like it's hard. Like, what do? You just bring up the Bible out of the blue? Like, oh, but what an opportunity you have in these situations where people are often willing to confess things like, "Oh, I just feel really fat today," or I don't know. You teach in a spin room, right? There's like, well, even most aerobics rooms, there's mirrors everywhere, right? But in spin class, women would get on the bike, and the first thing they do is they look at the mirror behind them, right? They look at their butt on the bike seat, which isn't really a flattering look, I don't think,
No.
for anyone. But they have this expectation that I don't know what they think they're going to see when they turn around, but they turn around and then they express like, oh, but then what happens next is where there's so much potential to share, I think, grace and truth and hope, right? Because instead of just doing the like, oh, don't you look good? Look at my butt. My butt looks fatter than your butt. It's like we do the like, who's the bigger ogre contest, like, oh, you're not fat, I'm fat.
Yeah.
And
Cut that out right now.
it's just like, it's not helpful for anyone. But what an opportunity we have to say, oh, girl, hey, that's not what I love about you. Like, that's not what's valuable about you. And, I struggle the same way. Like, I feel that way sometimes too. But what I'm learning is that my value isn't connected to whether or not I have a fat day or a bad hair day or whatever day you want to insert there. Like, my worth and value comes from Jesus alone. And what an opportunity we have to share hope in that way. So I don't know. I didn't expect to go there, but that's just my little diatribe on witnessing at the gym.
Yeah, I absolutely. And if you don't mind, if I can add to that,
Absolutely.
I think it's a great opportunity to demonstrate maybe a more positive approach.
Mhm.
So, wow, that felt really great when I was doing those, fill in the blank, burpees, spins, hills,
Burpees
whatever.
never feel great. What are you talking about? Sorry,
I
go
know,
ahead.
But whatever it is, and talk about how that made you feel. Talk about how just kind of more flip it and encouraging things. And wow, you really worked hard today. And I will say, I grew up in a church where or in a family, we like, our faith was important, but we didn't talk about it a lot.
Mhm.
And so the witnessing aspect of it is really uncomfortable for me. Like, I didn't even want to say God out loud for a long time. Like, it was, so for me, what I try and do is be that person who's just a little bit different.
Mm.
Who's like, what is it that's different about her? Why is she happy? Why is she not complaining? Which, by the way, was a process. I certainly haven't always been this way. And then maybe they see the cross around my neck and they're like, huh, okay. And then if the opportunity goes. So I would welcome or encourage your community to, if they're in those situations, think about how they can take captive those thoughts,
Right.
and make them positive, make them something that Jesus would be saying about us if he were here face to face. And, maybe it's just a quick little, super quick prayer of like, okay, God, what do you want me to say about this?
Right.
And, that might be a really great witness to other people too, without being like, well, the Lord Jesus gave me the strength to finish out the set today.
Which may be necessary.
That might be great.
In CrossFit. I actually think that's the prayer you need to pray, because I've done CrossFit and I couldn't walk for like 5 weeks.
I mean, if that's authentic to you, go for it. But then people would be like checking my temperature if they saw me doing that.
Absolutely. But I think your point is important. And there's no blame, no shame, because we have all botched this opportunity. I am sure. I know I have many, many, many times. So don't hear any shame or blame in this. But just going forward, like, yeah, we need to be aware that if we're complaining about our bodies just the way everyone else is complaining about their bodies, not that we want to be inauthentic, not that we want to be disgenuine, but how are we different?
Yeah.
Right? Like, how are we different? Like, because in doing that, are we saying, this is where my value and worth comes from, so this is really important to me, or like, I need this to be validated, or I don't know, any of those things. I'm musing out loud here, but how are we different if we complain the same way everyone else does? I mean, I think that's why shows like yours and shows like this one are important, because we got to work out these issues. We can't
Yeah.
stay in bondage to this body image stuff. We got to work it out.
Right.
Scripture says, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. This is part of figuring out what really saves you. Is what really saves you having a hot body that can do 100 burpees in 15 minutes? Actually, it's probably not a good time. I don't know. 100 burpees and I don't know. For me, it'd be 100 burpees in a week. Like stretched out, like one every couple hours. But how are you measuring yourself? What are you using to determine your worth? I think those are all really important questions. Yeah. Well, as we wrap up today, Amy, just tell us a little bit about your podcast and what the goal of your ministry is.
Yes, I would love to. So yes, like you said, I am the host of the Graced Health podcast, and I typically say two main things at the beginning, which I think kind of edify everything that I do. I say I'm a personal trainer, a nutrition coach. Not that I'm trying to put the identity, I'm just trying to get the authority there.
Yeah.
But your eating, movement, and body doesn't have to be perfect. You just need to be able to do what you're called to do. And that actually, just if I could go back really quickly to what you were just saying, for me, that's the secret sauce is what am I doing and why am I doing it? It's because God has a plan, and it might be a short plan for today. And then I need to be well enough to take my kid, and have enough energy to take my kid to the orthodontist later. Mm-hmm. Or it might be so I can live out this Graced Health calling, or, there's several other ways, but it's so I can do what I'm called to do and what God's asking me to do. And then the podcast is for women who want simple and grace-filled ways to take care of themselves. And then I do add in and enjoy a little chocolate in the process. I do get a little geeky sometimes. This year I'm focusing on I'll have a fitness focused one episode. I have a real faith focused episode, a general health one, and then I do a solo one. So the first 3 are interviews, and then I have Ask the Trainer. So people ask me questions all the time, and then they're just like 5 to 7 minute episodes. But I really, the best compliment I received one time was from my insurance agent, because she and I are in Toastmasters together, and she listens and she said, "Amy, you just make me feel like it doesn't have to be perfect."
I love that.
And I was like, yes, because it doesn't.
Absolutely. I love that.
And that's really what I want to do. Like, I want women to walk away with knowledge and with education, but without feeling like they have to do everything perfectly and follow all of the rules, which is something that we didn't even get into, but there's all these rules, right, that the fitness industry has given us. And just to know that they need to do what God is wanting them to do, to take care of their body in a way that works for them and how God made them.
Right. I love that. Because that's where freedom is.
Yes.
Right? There's no freedom in the rules. And then the rules just get confusing because it's like, well, wait, those rules work for her, but those rules didn't work for me. And it just disregards how different God made our bodies and what like our life experiences, how they've had a toll on our bodies and all those things. And I don't want to get into that too much right now as we wrap up, but I love that because it's not about perfection. Right. But yet I also love how you want to be wise, and you're following the research. You are geeking out on what's true according to what scientists are finding. And I love that. Like I think that's really helpful. It's good to have a sound foundation for what's working and what you're doing. But being perfect is not where it's at.
That's not part of it. No, if you want to have a perfect thing, and if you want a certain plan, I'm probably not for you.
Oh, there you go. Well, Amy, I love it. Tell everyone where they can listen to your podcast and connect with you.
I would love that. They can listen to the podcast at Graced Health. That's just the title. Basically, I'm Graced Health everywhere. I'm that on Instagram. I have a Graced Health community group on Facebook. So that's where we're sharing, movements and recipes and challenges and all of that kind of fun stuff. Also Graced Health on Facebook. I like to say I'm too old for Snapchat, and I don't get TikTok. So I'm not in the,
Yeah.
And then I'm a little dormant on Twitter, but every now and then I'll like something or retweet it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and then my website, by the way, gracedhealth.com. Yes. gracedhealth.com. And you can listen to the latest episodes on the website too. Just click on the podcast tab.
Okay, awesome. Well, Amy, thank you so much for being on the show today.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for watching or listening. And I hope something in today's episode has helped you stop comparing and start living. That's all for today. Bye bye.